What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, and I'm glad you're back. Glad you're back because we have some news to discuss, folks. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. It's kind of a slow news day. There's nothing major going on, if you will, which is odd. It's kind of out of sorts, if you will, for the Trump administration because there's always some sort of lawsuit in the works coming down the pipeline or whatever, or Trump said something that offended the left and you're like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Every time Donald Trump does something, the left, they get into a frenzy and they start bashing their face against the freaking wall for some reason, yelling fascist. I don't get it, but oh, hang on. That's exactly what they're doing up in Maine, y'all. Check this out. Maine clinics denied Medicaid funds for low-income patients during lawsuit over Trump cuts to abortion providers. Oh, this is just for low-income patients. Yeah, they can't abort their babies, if you will. Oh, my goodness. Like, this is a discussion we can get into. And look, I think that if you sit me down one-on-one with just about anybody, I think I could convince them of my position, that they could be in the same position as far as abortion. I think I could do that. I might not be able to do that on camera to you guys, but, you know, because when you're in a one-on-one position, I think, yeah, that's a little bit different. You know, you got to take into feelings and all this other nonsense. You got to take all that into account because you're right there. Your IRL, if you will. But we'll get into this and see if maybe, if you don't agree, maybe I can change your mind, possibly, if you hear me out at least with an open mind. Check this out. A network of clinics in Maine will not resume getting Medicaid funds to treat thousands of low-income patients during its lawsuit over Trump administration cuts to abortion providers, a judge ruled Monday. The decision against Maine family planning came despite a ruling last month by another federal judge who said Planned Parenthood clinics around the country must continue to be reimbursed for Medicaid funding as the provider wrangles with the Trump administration over efforts to defund it. That legal fight continues, and I can promise you this, I can almost guarantee that, look, once that federal judge, like we talked about in my last video, is an activist. And they're only thinking about, oh, it's a woman's right to choose, and that's it. They're just activists doing activist judge activity over here. Once this makes it to appeals, it's going to be overturned, folks, because you cannot, right? Like, we have co-equal branches around here. If Donald Trump wants to cut to Planned Parenthood, and hang on, just so happens the legislative branch backs him up on that, there's not really much that the court system can do. They must adhere to the will of the people for the most part, right? Like, sure, there's legislation that could be passed and Donald Trump signed it into law and the courts are like, But in a case like this, when we're talking about funding and considering that, you know, funding is pretty much Congress's wheelhouse. They have control over the funding. They want to cut funding to Planned Parenthood and, you know, considering the fact that abortion is not enshrined in our Constitution as a right because God has not given out any such rights, and neither does the state. Of course, our rights don't derive from the state. The state is there to protect our rights. Our rights derive from God. Think about that for a second. The state does not give you the rights. Look it up in the Constitution. As a matter of fact, the state is just there to say what those rights, what those God-given rights are. We write those down to make sure everybody knows, and that when it comes time to dispute these issues, yeah, we have documents backing that up, and that the government, the executive branch to be precise, is the branch that is tasked with making sure that your rights are adhered to per the Constitution, as a matter of fact. But we'll get into all this. Let's keep going. Without Medicaid, the much smaller provider in Maine says it will have to stop serving hundreds of primary care patients by the end of October. The organization says abortions are a relatively small percentage of its overall services, which include cervical cancer screenings, contraception, and primary care to low-income residents in one of the poorest and most rural states in the Northeast. Now, what that's doing, That is tugging on your heartstrings. Oh, well, abortion is technically, it's just a small percentage, but we do contraception as well. Those are the same things, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I'm sorry. Look, that is like pre-abortion abortion. That's like stopping it from happening, essentially. Well, right, which I'm fine with that. Contraception is fine. But look, I'm not fine with the federal government subsidizing your way of life, because that's what it is. It's a lifestyle choice. You choose not to have kids, or you choose to take a medicine to not to have kids, essentially. That is what is going on. So that is not something that the government should have to pay for at all in any circumstance, right? Look, we'll get into this. Screw it. We might as well, about halfway through the video, right? So, okay. There is one aspect of abortion that I think is justified to an extent, right? Like, if a doctor deems it medically necessary to actually abort the baby for whatever reason, that by some miracle, if we terminate the life of the baby, it'll save the life of the mother, which, I mean, that's got to be exceedingly rare, because once again, in cases like that, which this is what Democrats always argue, oh, well, it's a woman's right to choose. That's a different argument, by the way, but they always talk about, oh, well, the mother's life thing. When is that necessary? Like, what is the difference, in other words? Ask any medical expert about this. What is the difference between aborting the child to save the mother's life and performing a C-section, removing the child to save the mother's life? What is the difference there? Why aborting it makes any sort of difference at all, right? That's the medical exception that they always talk about. That for some reason, they seem to think that conservatives are totally against that, right? Like, if a doctor says it's medically necessary to do this, there should not be a single person in the world have a say over that, except for that doctor and maybe a second doctor, right? Because medical opinions matter, and we always want second opinions. There should not be a lawyer, a politician, a celebrity, anybody that should have a say over that, right? Even the mother herself. I mean, if she wants to go ahead and terminate herself in the process, I guess. But I can't really see a doctor having anything to do with that. That would be just her getting up and leaving the doctor's office and just letting nature take its course, right? That would be by God's hand at that point. But when is that necessary? When? Somebody let me know, because from everything I can look up, that's exceedingly rare. It never happens. Almost never happens. So anytime we're talking about abortion, we're talking about elective abortions. That means you choosing to terminate that baby's life. It's a woman's right to choose. Woman's right. Do you think that's a right? I don't think it is. I really don't. It doesn't say anything about that in the Bible at all, and we all know. That's where our rights derive from. That's where our morality derives from. Essentially, the Bible. Religion, for goodness sakes. Everything. Every moral framework we have derives from the Bible, from the book, from the good book, from religion. It all does. It says nothing in there about your right to choose, for goodness sakes. Like, once again, contraception exists, folks. So there technically should be no need for abortion. So why should the federal government pay for it? Once again, like, let's take, for instance, you get pregnant. Whoa, boom, there it is. If you should immediately decide at that point whether you're ready or not. We should not be able to get to a point, right? This is what I always say. 12 weeks max. 12 weeks. If you can't decide by that point, it's too late. I'm willing to compromise. Is the left willing to compromise? That's my question. Think about that for a second. They want all the way up to and including birth. They want to be able to have that right to choose. Well, to be logically consistent, that would only make sense, right? course, at the same time, pro-life, it's logically consistent that once that life starts, it's over at that point. But once again, folks, everything isn't just black and white. There is gray area in this. Once again, like I said, compromise. I'm willing to compromise. Is the left willing to compromise? No, they are not. That tells you everything you need to know right there, folks. Tells you everything you need to know. You give them X amount of time to choose. 12 whole freaking weeks. As a matter of fact, I would like that reduced to 8. That's plenty of time. 2 whole months. You got 2 whole months to choose. If you can't do it at that point, then I don't know what to tell you, to be honest with you. I really don't. That's just my opinion on this thing. But I've got one more little section on this here news article, and then we done with this. Check this out, y'all. Let's finish this thing up. President Donald Trump's policy and tax bill, known as the Big Beautiful Bill, blocked Medicaid money from flowing to Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider. The parameters in the bill also stop funding from reaching Maine Family Planning, and it is the only other organization that has come forward publicly to say its funding is at risk. Maine Family Planning says Medicaid dollars are not used for its abortion services, and it's unfair to cut off funding for the clinics solely because Congress wanted to defund Planned Parenthood, an attorney for the organization told the judge earlier this month. Well then, look, I'm sorry, your funding should not be getting cut. If you are absolutely not using that money. But hang on just a second. There are specific provisions in the Big Beautiful Bill that cuts off the funding for abortions, right? Not for any of this other nonsense, just for abortions. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But once again, this is not the statement from the judge. This is a statement from the lawyer. And we know lawyers, they love to not tell the truth, if you will. However, Judge Lance Walker said in his ruling Monday that the payments will not resume during the ongoing lawsuit by the provider seeking to restore the funds. He wrote that Congress can withhold federal funds and otherwise disassociate from conduct that is not enshrined as a constitutional right, like I was saying. Walker, a 2018 Trump appointee, also wrote that it would be a special kind of judicial hubris to undermine the big bill, which he described as the end result of democratic processes. That is right. The network of 18 clinics said in a statement Monday that Walker's ruling will destabilize the state's entire health infrastructure by potentially turning low-income patients away from their doctors. The group said about 8,000 people receive family planning and primary care from its clinics. Mainers' health should never be jeopardized by political decisions, and we will continue to fight for them, said George Hill, President and Chief Executive Officer of Maine Family Planning. When asked if the organization is considering appealing the decision, the group issued a statement that said the network is considering all options to ensure that Maine's Medicaid patients can continue to receive the health care they need and deserve. Attorneys representing the Trump administration did not immediately comment. Emily Hall, an attorney for the U.S. Department of Justice, told the judge in court earlier this month that Congress has a right not to contract with abortion providers. She is totally right about that. Once again, the government is not made, its main function is not to make your life free of charge. It is there to ensure our safety, or try to ensure our rights, give us a safe place to live, make sure the economy is moving along swimmingly. It is not there to subsidize your way of life. They are not there to provide insurance, for crying out loud, although they do. They shouldn't. Like, none of this is all heartstring tugging. And once again, folks, when you think about it, that's the only argument you ever get from Democrats is please, like, we're pleading with you, tugging on your heartstrings. That's it. You don't get data. You don't get logic. You don't get facts. If you do, it's heartstring tugging facts. It's all it is, folks. It's all it ever is. And I kind of can't stand it because they're always on the losing end, it seems like, these days. They're on the losing end. Congress doesn't want to do this. Like the judge said, this was the result of democracy. You guys like democracy, right? Right? Well, that's the end result. This is what we voted on, folks. This is exactly what we voted on, and we're getting it. Have to suck it up, Buttercup. Look, I'm sorry. None of your health care is in jeopardy. You're not being denied your health care. Once again, go back to the big, beautiful bill. Oh, that's work requirements. If you don't have a job. That's only if you don't have a job, by the way. You must have a job or go do some community service, do something to kind of give back to the community, and then you can get your health care. Other than that, we're not funding for your abortion. I'm sorry, your elective abortions. Because once again, the whole medical necessity, that's exceedingly rare and almost never happens. Almost never happens. Seriously. So, yeah, that's not what we're cutting the funding from, by the way. It's all these elective abortions. People choosing, oh, well, I'm not ready for this. I'm not financially stable enough. Let me tell you, folks, you'll never be ready. If you're a new parent, you've never had a kid before, you're never going to be ready. At that same point, though, you are ready. You just don't know it. It changes your life for the better. You instantly know what to do. Right? It's amazing. It's one of those things. Look, I was in that position as well. I was a kid. I didn't want to have a child at certain points. Then I did. Boom, it happened. I immediately grew up. My priorities immediately changed. And I realized at that point when I first held my son, my life has purpose now. I have drive. I have something to work for. I have to make sure that this life isn't snuffed out. I have to protect this kid. I have stuff to do now. It gives you drive. It gives you purpose. It gives you meaning. It really does, y'all. So I would think twice before snuffing out a life that could change yours for the better. I'm just saying. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. That's all I got. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. You like staying up to date with news and politics and all that good stuff. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. And hey, if you're so inclined, I would deeply, deeply appreciate it if you guys would click that join button, sign up, and become a member. I'd be your bestie for resty, that's for sure. But y'all remember that God is always with us and He loves each and every one of you, even if you don't know Him. But y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.